The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Good morning or good afternoon, everybody. This is Belinda Allen from Ingevity coming to you live. I am oddly enough attending the Power BI World Tour in Charlotte. So I'm actually sitting in a conference room at the Microsoft office today, as weird luck would have it, and coming to talk to you today about Power BI as well. So let's go ahead and get this ball rolling. So I am at a bit of a disadvantage today. I do only have my laptop with me, so I don't have my multiple monitors. So there might be a little bit of lag with me switching back and forth between my slide deck and the demo. So please forgive me. For those of you who I haven't met in person, I am the BI and Training Programs Manager for Njevity. I've been working with GP for almost 28 years now, and I've written a couple books on GP and business intelligence. So when Microsoft came out with this product, which officially has been out for 3 years, I was all over it. I could not wait to get my hands on it, nor can I wait to show it to you now. But before I begin, I do want to talk about our mission statement here at Ingevity, because this is very near and dear to our hearts. And we start every presentation with our mission to improve the life and success of our partners and customers by providing exceptional business application experiences that simplify, inform, and delight. And today is all about informing. And as usual, I want to begin this particular session with this particular webinar with just 2 poll questions so that I can get a feel for where everybody is. So if you guys do not mind, if you would answer these poll questions for me, I would find it super helpful. Okay, excellent. Okay, great. And that helps me know where you guys are. And I am, oh good, a little bit of Power BI people out there. So you guys are my peeps. So let's go ahead and I'm going to close that poll out and then ask you guys the second question. And so let's go ahead and launch that one. So if you would mind answering that question as well. Yes, I even put a sass answer in there so you could be sassy to me. Saying, yes, I told you I use it. Pay attention, Belinda. Okay, that's just my own weird sense of humor. All right, thank you guys so much for that. I'm going to go ahead and close that out. That helps me figure out where to focus this presentation. So today is all about piquing your interest with Power BI and getting you excited about it. And if you are already using it, perhaps showing you a couple of new features and new ways to consume your data. But I also want you to think about how Power BI can improve your business success. It certainly can make your job easier if you're having to pull numbers for people, but it's a pretty cool tool, and I'm sure by the end you guys will be super excited. Now, I like to start by talking about the TV show police shows. I love police shows. And I, like most people, I think I've seen all the Law and Orders probably 10 times a piece. But one day I was sitting there thinking about the difference between Dragnet when it came out. And although I was too young to watch it at the time, like most people, I know the catchphrase, just the facts, ma'am. And then I thought about Law and Order today. So back in the 60s, they were interested in only getting the answers to the questions they were asking. Where if you think about the Law and Order shows, when they're interviewing people, they just let them ramble. And often they resolve the crime by thinking about something that their interviewees rambled on about. Like they might say, oh, well, they didn't know that there was a fire because they just blew out of birthday candles and they thought the smell was from the birthday candles, or it's always something like that. And they find that they could get the answers to solving their crimes in that conversation, not in something they even knew to ask, but that somebody accidentally volunteered. And this is kind of the way BI works, is sometimes the answers that we're looking for are are answers to questions we don't even know we need to be asking. So being able to analyze your data is pretty darn important. Now, this is the technically the definition of Power BI by Microsoft, but I only highlighted the words that are really important to me. It's a set of analytics tools that enable you to share data and share insights and get answers through the use of reports and dashboards. And then you can consume this information and analyze it on pretty much every device. So once you publish something in the cloud, you can get the Power BI app for your Android or for your iPhone or for your iPad and even your Apple Watch. And you could consume the data on that device because it's all in the cloud. And I love that. So this really is a reporting and dashboarding tool that makes analyzing your data significantly easier and makes it significantly easier to get access to the data when and where you need it. Now, we're going to cover a little bit of a brief explanation here, and then we're going to get into a demo. So there is something called the web service. So when you go to powerbi.com, you could log in, and when you log in, you can consume your data there. So your reports will exist. You can create dashboards. What you're seeing on the screen is an example of a dashboard, but you can get to your dashboards and look at things. And as I mentioned, once you do that, you'll see on the right, you could get access to it on your iPad or your iPhone, and that happens to be an actual screenshot of my iPad in landscape mode. Now, also at powerbi.com, you could download the desktop version of Power BI, and there is no charge to download that and use that. So anybody could download it and use it internally if they're not pushing it to the cloud for no charge at all. Most people will use the desktop to create their reports that they then publish to the cloud. And then once they're published to the cloud, they can create a dashboard, and we'll be doing that today. So let's go ahead, and this is where I gotta break screen a little bit and pull this up. Okay, so what you're seeing is the Power BI desktop file. And so there is a new version that comes out every month because they're adding new and cool features to it all the time. And you notice that it has a lot of office look and feel to it. So for example, the panes happen to be on the right, but there's a fields pane and a visual panes. It's got a ribbon across the top and a menu bar. And we're going to be utilizing all of these. Along the left side, I don't know, let me zoom in a little bit. You could see there, that's in report mode, and then this one is a data mode, and then this one is a relationship mode. And so we'll be getting into some of those as well. The first thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to go out and get vendor data from my SQL database. Now you can get data from an incredibly large number. I don't even know how to explain how many different places you can get your data from. Chances are, if you need data from it, there's a way you can get data out of it. But I'm going to focus right now on getting data from my SQL server that's on my local network. So what I'm going to do is just click on the Get Data icon right there, and this Get Data window will pop up. And here are all the different data options that are available to me, but they have them organized. So if I go to database, I can just go straight to SQL Server, the top option, and double click on it. And it's first going to ask me what is the name of my server, and the name of my server is GB. If you don't know, you could talk to your IT person or talk to one of us at Ingevity if you're one of our customers, or if you're a customer, talk to another customer, not an Ingevity customer, you can talk to your partner as well, and they'll be able to help you with that. And then the name of your database. So there's the name of my database. Mine is 2. And I'm going to go ahead and click on OK. And the first time you connect to your database, it's going to ask you for your credentials. Now, if you have, depending on how you have it set up, you might enter in your Windows credentials. I happen to have security in my SQL set up for Windows, but you could also go to database and you can key in your GP login information. So I'm just going to use Windows here because I have access to everything with my Windows account. And I'm going to go ahead and click on Connect. You're going to get this message that pops up about encryption. Go ahead and click OK. That's just because your accounting data is encrypted. It ensures a little more protection for you. Then you're going to see every single view, table, and stored procedure in your database. Now, what that means is anywhere that data can reside, you're going to be able to get access to it. Now, I encourage most people to stick with views. Views are fake tables. And what makes them fake is they don't really store data. They connect to the tables that have the data, but they organize it for you so that everything is connected properly. They typically have better names on them. And so instead of seeing custom, it'll say customer number. So try to stick to views if you can. And the views are easy to identify because they're words typically that make sense. That's how you'll know. There's also an icon that indicates that that's a view. So I'm going to just come up to the top and type in vendors, or start typing it in. And now I could see views that have vendors, and I even see stored procedures there if you happen to be a SQL person. So if I were to just click on it to highlight it, I'll even get a preview of the data on the right. And this assures me that that is indeed the data that I want. So I'm going to just click on that checkbox and then go ahead and click on Load. And this is going to load the data into this file. Now, Power BI, when you open up a Power BI file, it is like an Excel file. So it contains all the data right within that file itself, and it works independently. If I wanted to open up another Power BI file, I would have a whole nother set of data listed in it. Now, over on the right now, my field panes is all populated. So let's go in there and take a look. So you can see I have some 1099 fields. I have some different account numbers. So everything in that table, I'm going to just stretch that out a bit so we could read all those. Everything in that table are fields that I could use on my report. So I'm going to start by looking for the vendor ID. These are in alphabetical order, and we'll talk about how many there are and how you can clean that up in a minute. I'm going to get the vendor ID, and whoops, because that is a text field, it automatically starts creating a visual that is a table, because that's how it stores the text fields. Then I'm going to go up and look for, I think it's called current balance. So let me just come up into the search and start typing current balance. There it is. And I'll click on that. Now I have this table that is showing me the vendors and their current balances. And that's how easy it is to start creating things. If I had started with current balance, I'm just going to drag and drop that on. It'll start by creating a clustered column chart for me, because I started with the numbers. And now if I were to add a vendor on top of that, let's see. Oh, let me type in ID. There we go. All right, so let me take vendor ID and drag that on. Now I'm seeing that clustered column chart where it's sorted by vendor ID. And that's as easy as it is to creating visuals. Now there's some other pieces in here that take advantage of a lot of other Microsoft technology. So for example, if you've ever used Bing or Google, you're used to asking a question in your what we'll call native language. And we have this option called Ask a Q&A. So now I could start typing in questions. And let me see if I could do this live. So I'm going to say, show vendor, let's see, current balance. And then as you look, you're going to see the current balance is appearing right there on the screen. So current balance, and sorry, doing that same screen share. So we've got the current balance listed right there, and I could have asked a little bit more in detail. So let me do another Q&A. So I'm going to ask another Q&A down here, and I'm going to say, show current balance by state. and automatically it starts creating that kind of visual. And this is how I could start building out my reports. Now, obviously, this current balance over in the bottom left, it's summarizing, and we don't want it to summarize. We don't want it to round. So what I'm going to do in the visualization pane over on the right side, I'm going to click on the format button there in the middle. And now what I can do is if I go open up the data label area, I could tell it to not round. And now I'm seeing the full dollar amount. And then I could also do some other additional things, like maybe put a border around it, or if I want to put some background color on it, I could do that as well. So there's a lot of things I could do. I'm going to resize that. And there's a lot of really powerful analytics you can get out of utilizing this data. And so far, all I've got are just vendor balance informations here. But I could do more things if I was interested. So I'm going to take this particular one, this particular visual. I've got my handlebars around it. I'm going to change it to the globe. And if you're connected to Bing, then one of the things you're going to end up getting is a map. And what I'm going to do, let me come up and let me choose state. Now, state, right now, I'm going to select this visual. And in the location field, I'll drag state, and let's see if it recognizes that. Now I've got an Australian state, but I also have a US state, and I could click right there and see access to that. And then if I wanted to dig in a little further, I could type in city. So let me find city. And now I'm going to drag the city in as well. And once I do that, it starts populated even more. And then I could also come in and place some filters on this. So again, in the visualization pane, I can come in and let me just put in a filter for the state for Minnesota. So what I'm going to do on this filter is click on the drop-down list. And I'm going to find, well, we'll use Illinois. And I'll click on Illinois, and notice how it's zooming in for me so I could see access to it. I'm not sure why I got a little rogue Louisiana one there. I think it's because it thinks the city might be the same. But I could solve that because Power BI gets like, oh, you know, maybe this is not just a text, maybe it's a city. If I go to the modeling tab, I can come in and categorize this as a city. And then I could do the same for the state. I'm going to categorize the state as a state. And then when I do that, that's going to dramatically change this report for me. So if I were to, now that I'm looking at just Illinois, if I were to drill down on it, let me come in here. I'm going to bad example of one to drill down on, but I should have drilled down on a different report. But you could get a lot of really powerful pieces of data by doing some of the different things in these reports. And I used my fingers there to make that bigger, and I am bouncing all over the place. Where's Illinois? There it is. I guess I took my Illinois filter out. Oh, I did City of Chicago. All right, so let me change that filter and get rid of that filter. See if I can go back. There we go. So you can see there's a lot of really cool things that we can do. All right. Don't know how, oh, I clicked on that. Let me just get rid of this. Go back up. There we go. All right. So let's add in another piece of data. So this time, let me go in and add in the AP trial balance. So what I'm going to do is click on the Home tab again and go to Get Data. And when I go to Get Data this time, that same window is going to pop up, and I'm going to go and select my database. And it knows I'm already logged in, so it's not going to ask me for credentials again. But I do need to key in the server and the database name. Then it remembers my credentials, so I'll get that list of all the tables, views, and stored procedures. So this time I'm going to go in and pull up my payables transaction. So I'll choose start typing in payables. And if I click on it, I can see all of the transactions that are affiliated. So this time I'm going to go in and choose edit. And there is a feature called Query Editor, which is almost exactly like the query editor within Excel. And it enables you to do a little bit of cleanup of data. So for example, I'm going to go in and select my columns, and I can see all of my columns. And now I can be very specific about the columns that I'm interested in. I do not want all the columns. I just want a few of the columns. So I'm going to get due date as well. And then I'm also going to get whether or not it's voided. All right. So once I click on here, I dramatically changed to 8 columns, where before I had 301. So you notice these steps. Every time I do something in here, it records my steps. And so now I can clean up my data and do a little bit of editing. So for example, I have document date and I have due date. I'm going to change both of those to dates only. All right. I also want to exclude any voided options. So I'm going to choose from the drop-down list here and say I only want where void equals no. If void is equal to null, that means that transaction is not posted yet. So if it is set to no, then I'm getting all posted transactions but no voided ones. And now I can remove that column because I've already filtered it down to all of my not voideds, and now I don't need the void column anymore. If I'm interested also in only getting transactions with a balance, because those are my open payables, I will set it where the current balance does not equal 0, and now I'm seeing only my open transactions. Now, if I were to go to due date, one of the things I could do is go ahead and get an aging date here. So I'm going to, at the top, choose add column. And because that's a date field, this date option is highlighted. And if I click there, I could tell it to age by the due date. And now I'm seeing the aging as in days, hours, minutes, and seconds. So what I'm going to do is just highlight this one, go up to home, and I'm going to change the data type from duration to whole number. So I'm just seeing it due by days. And now if it's due out in the future, it's showing negative numbers. And I want to for it to be positive if it's not due yet, and only be negative if it's past due. So what I'm going to do is click on the transform button. And you don't have to remember all this, just see some of the power of this. And I'm going to do simple math. So I'll choose standard and multiply, and I'll do a -1. And one of the things that you're seeing is it's recording all these steps, so I don't have to go through this but one time, and that's when I'm creating the report. Now I can get rid of the due date column, so now I can see the aging when it occurs. And if I want to create an aging bucket, that shows me like, if it's 0, 30, 30, 60, 60, 90, or whatever, I can come up to add column, and I could choose to create a conditional column. And so what I might do is, we'll call this one bucket, and I could come in and say, if the age is greater than, and this is just like an if statement in Excel, if it's greater than 2000, then the output is way out. If it's not greater than 2000, is the age greater than 1000? We'll call that future. And if the age is greater than 0, we'll call that one now, because I have really way out there data. Nothing's really current. Otherwise, it's past due. And when I click on this now, I'm going to see I've got buckets out here that are my aging buckets. And I'm going to go and set that as a text so that it'll work like a text for me. So now I have my aging bucket. And what I have over here under age, I don't no longer need that column, so I'm going to remove that. Now we have the issue that we have when we are dealing with smart list, and that's payments and returns show up as positive numbers. And you can see in this case, it's definitely set to a positive number. And so I want to work on cleaning that up. So I'm going to do something a little bit different this time. I'm going to duplicate, I just right mouse click, the document type. Now I have my document type. I'll hold the control key down and get the current type. And now what I'm going to do under transform is choose to pivot my columns, and the value will be the current amount. Now what this did for me is I have a column for each type of data. So if it's an invoice, the invoice field is populated. If it's a payment, the payment field's populated, and then I have credit memo. So what I'm going to do now is go through and I am going to replace the values so that if it says null, and it's only null like if it's an invoice for the payment amount and the credit amount came up as null, I'm going to replace nulls with zeros. And that takes care of that. And now I can create something that will take the invoice minus payment minus credit memo, and that's going to make my negative number for me. Now this is a little bit more than you probably were thinking you'd see, but I want you to see the power of what you could do with this, because I'm going to go to add column and create a custom column. And the reason I wanted to show you this is, I'll call this one balance, why not? Balance, is because there is a lot of power in what you can do with Power BI. And would you necessarily do this? No. You would probably do it a little bit different way, but I want you to get a feel for it. And you notice there's blank spaces too. I should have cleaned that up. But now I have this balance column, and if I go and set that as a decimal place, I can get rid of these columns. So I could go through and work my way logically through organizing my data so that it's something powerful for me to use. I'm going to go over to that vendor file while we're there, because there's 166 columns and I do not need that many. So I'm just going to go and grab a few. So I'll grab vendor ID, vendor name, city, state, because I use those. I'm going to grab vendor class, and I'm going to grab that current balance. All right, and I'll click OK on that. And now I'm going to click close and apply. And now I'm going to have my two data sources right here within my Power BI file. So I have vendors already, and I had state pulled up. We'll unhighlight that in a moment. But now this data source consists of two separate queries that go out to my GP data. Now, you could have it go out against your GP data, or you could have it look at another data set in your GP data. So as long as there's a way to mash those together, you'll be able to do that. And you can see now I have payables transactions and I have vendor transactions. And I'm going to click over here on this relationship bar, and notice that a relationship was established by vendor ID. So it automatically recognized, hey, vendor ID and vendor ID, they should match up together. And I'm going to go in and edit that so you could see that. So I can see the vendor ID here and the vendor ID here. They link together. So that's how it knows they work together. So when I use the vendor ID in one place, it's going to use the vendor ID in another place as well. I'm going to click on this new balance over here, and now I can come in and I could literally create this matrix. I'll do this now, and I'm going to get the vendor ID. I'll get the vendor name from here, and let's see, add that in rows. And I think I might need to do a little bit more linking there, so I'll fix that in a moment. And then I'll have document type, and then I'll have document number, and then I'll have the balance. And then in the columns, let's get rid of that. In the columns, we'll put the bucket. All right, so we basically have this age trial balance that I just created for you that's completely refreshable. And if you want to publish it to the cloud, you simply click on publish. You could log in using your Power BI account, and it's prompting me to save this. I'll just call this test. And now it is connecting to the cloud to Power BI. It's asking me, I have the professional version. So I also have some teams in Office 365. So it was enabling me to automatically share them with my team. And I just chose my private workspace. And now I'm going to go ahead and open up that data set. And now that I have that data set open, it's opening up Power BI. Let me log in as me. I have a lot of different aliases. And let's see. Here's Power BI. And my report should open up any second. All right, so let me go to my workspace. We'll find it a little easier this way. So I'll go to reports. Here's the report I just created. So this is now in the cloud and I get the full report. So if I wanted to, I could add any one of these just by highlighting it and clicking on the little push pin. I can create a new dashboard or add to an existing one. So we'll call this one intro. So I just pin that down, and maybe I want to pin this map down as well. So let me find that intro dashboard. And then this one also that I created with the Q&A, I'll add that to my intro dashboard. And then now when I go to dashboards, I could see that intro dashboard, and here's my dashboard for me. And once again, I could also ask questions about my data from here. So I could say, show, let's see, what did I call it? Balance. If I could type, there we go. Balance by vendor class. And I think yeah, there we go. So now I'm looking at balance by vendor class. And so I could still use the Q&A feature here. And there's a large variety of things that you can do with this. Now, some of your data sources, and if any of you are in Power GP Online, you have access to this automatically. Some of the data sources you could actually get to by utilizing something called apps and app source. So I'm going to go ahead and just open this up. And let's connect. And here are an example of some of our current data sources that we have. So let me open up a payables one, and you can get an idea of how dashboards can look for you and how they create. And if you use something like MailChimp or Microsoft CRM or Salesforce, there's literally hundreds of them. You can automatically connect and use your account, and you'll have reports and dashboards pre-created for you. And that's pretty darn powerful. So let's open up this one, and we'll get a look and feel here of what reports can look like. So this is a report that we have available, once again, where I'm looking at open payables. So I have my aging bucket a little bit different here. Transactions on hold, whether or not the vendor's on hold. I could look easily and see if a vendor's on hold. I could see my AP balance by aging bucket. I think I have everything past due in this company. I could go through and look at 1099 information. So there's an amazing amount of information that you can extract from your system. And this is actually looking at my live GP data right here. So I wanted to be able to show you that. I'm going to go back to my workspace for a moment. And that data set we just created in that just a few minutes ago, getting that vendor and that payables transaction. There's also something else that we can do here. I'm going to click on this ellipsis button, and we have something called Quick Insights. And Quick Insights is where Microsoft is using their intelligence tools to evaluate my data set. And when they evaluate it, they're coming up with a giant list of reports that it found and created, and it's already done. So what it does, it doesn't know what kind of data it's looking at, and nor does it care. It's looking at the data for trends and outliers to those trends. So if I were to click on View Insights, I could see a large variety of reports or visualizations that were created for me by the system. So here I could see count of payables transactions by state. Notice there's noticeably more in Illinois than any other state. So we kind of saw that one. Count by city. Let's see, let me find one. And I have to admit, when it comes to GP, probably about 90% of the time, I do not find anything that is really a big revelation to me. But every now and then, it's like, wow, I did not know that. So here it's talking about who has noticeably more balance. So let's see. Let's keep going. I'm going to just grab one of these. You can see it created quite a few. Let's see. Count of payables transactions by city. So it looks interesting. It looks like Vancouver had more than anyone. If that was interesting to me, I can click on that push pin and add that visualization also to my dashboard. And you notice that it was also available for me on the phone as well. And then I could reorganize my dashboard if I wanted to, so that it looked a little bit cleaner if I wanted to do that. And there we go. So you could do a lot of really cool things with Power BI. Let's go back to our slide deck for just a moment. So I just want to point out, you might want to download the slide deck. So there's a couple of things in here that I go through. Like I go through the steps on connecting data. You can see I'm going in screen 1, I'm going to database and SQL Server. In screen 2 in the top, I'm entering in my server name and database. And then in screen 3, I'm selecting it from my navigator list. Oops, went too fast on that one. If you are connecting to something that has an API string or something on the web, then in this case you can see I'm using an OData feed, but there's also a web feed in screen number 1. You would just paste it into that URL, and then in number 3, when you get your to where you key in your credentials, depending on where it comes from, like in this one, I'm getting data from the city of New York. I just log in as anonymous, but where the 4 is, you could see basic. So some of them you'll need to key in credentials. So you might need to go in and either click on Windows or basic to enter in your credentials, just like you do your GP login and password. If you want to go directly to edit in the query editor, you can simply click on edit. And then I have a couple of other list that I could use, and if you want to download these, you can. I'm not going to go in. I'm not going to go into these very much, but I do want to talk about how the data refreshes, because if your data is local on your network, or which probably, I think looking at the list, most of you that would be the case, then you would either need to install something called a gateway where your data gets stored, and a gateway has to stay running all the time, and it actually responds to the Power BI service. So the Power BI service, if you in the cloud, if you told it you wanted it to update once a month or once a day, or 8 times a day, you could schedule it up to 8 times a day in hour increments. Then it looks for it sends information to a place where the gateway talks to, and then the gateway could upload it. So the gateway is also free software that Microsoft has. And if you're interested in doing anything with Power Apps and Flow, if you know what that is, the same gateway can be used for those as well. If you access information from an Excel database and that Excel file, and that Excel file is on your OneDrive, it will automatically query the data on your OneDrive every hour on the hour without you having to do anything. And that's kind of like what I call a poor man's gateway. So if somebody opens up a file on the OneDrive file, maybe it's in a shared spot, and they refresh it, then everybody who is using that Excel file who's feeding off of it will automatically be refreshed. So that's another way that you can do some connections. If your data is in Office 365 groups, again, that will also automatically connect. And then, like I showed you, connecting to that one dashboard that was done through a URL, those can automatically connect for you as well. So there's a variety of ways that you could go through and connect to your data. I do want to point out that there is a new desktop version every month. It'll just tell you in the bottom right corner there's a new version available, but they're adding great features to them all the time. And if you're an IT person, the default download is the 64-bit, but you can click on advanced and get to the 32-bit version. So I wanted to point that out. The web version gets updated every week, but you should not have any issues with that as well. Now, I want to talk about pricing for a moment, because this is a pretty powerful tool, and I very awkwardly showed you how easy it is to connect to data and start doing some things. There is a free version and there is a professional version. So the professional version is, I think, $9.95 per user per month, and you can have a mixed mode. They are the exact same version with the difference of sharing. In the professional version, if I have the professional license, I could share with anyone else in my company that has the professional license as well. So that's one thing. I can create a dashboard and share my dashboard with people. And as I make changes to my dashboard, they automatically receive the changes as well. If I were to go in and create something called row level security, meaning I saw Ben on the phone and I saw Ann. If I said Ben gets access to all the customers that are in New York and Ann gets access to all the customers in Colorado, then even though they're using the exact same data set, Ben will only see New York customers, Ann will only see Colorado customers. And if I happen to have access to customers in South Carolina, and there are no customers in South Carolina, I just won't see anything. And if Melissa has full access, she's going to see all the customers. So that row level security is a way of sharing, and so that also requires the professional version. Now, there is something called premium as well, and premium is space, essentially. Both the free and the professional version get 10 gigabytes of space up in the cloud. Now, whatever you use locally on your machine is completely irrelevant. But once you publish it to the cloud, you get 10 gigabytes of space per user. If you need more, that's when you get the premium version. So you're just buying more space. And one of the things, the premium version is a little expensive, but one of the things that it can do for you is, if we were all in the same company and we had premium, as I'm managing it, I would have professional and everybody else could have the free and they'd still have the ability to share. So you could get away with a lot less professional license. So that's pretty amazing. If you haven't signed up, you can sign up for the trial version for the professional for free. And go ahead. I encourage you to start there and go ahead and use it. And you'll know then if you're going to end up needing the professional version. But you can just go to PowerBI.com. Now, before I go into my poll questions again, let me go back to Power BI, because one of the things I want to show you, and this is another way you can create your own reports and let people in the company use them, or at least start from them, is we have something called a template. And I have one that I've built for the GP user groups. And if you guys want a copy, I'll tell you how you can get a copy of it. And oops, I'm in the cloud. Let me go to the desktop. Here we go. Okay. So what I could do is, if I were to go to File and Import, I could go to a Power BI template. And when I do this, let me go to the right folder. And it's a gift from Belinda. I'm going to click on it. You could also double click on it. And it acts like a template for Excel, kind of. The only difference is everything is all laid out. It's going to ask me a couple questions about my SQL login, and then it's going to automatically create the report for me. So you could create this. Now, there's a description when you create it, and I typically populate the description with everything you would need access to. So I'm going to key in my server, and I'm going to key in my company, and I'll click on Load. Now, one of the things I did, one of those things that I said you need access to, is actually where I'm running just a SQL script. You don't have to know anything about that, but I am running it. And I'm going to go ahead and click on Run. And once that finishes, it is going out, excuse me, and it's connecting to my data and populating my data set for me. Not only is it doing that, but it's going in that query editor and running all those steps that similar to what I just showed you, and creating that for me, and then creating the report for me. So here's where I kind of created like a little mini balance sheet, and net profit is the total here, and a little mini P&L, and the net profit should match. That's just kind of like a down and dirty one. But I could come in and say, oh, I'm only interested in the year 2018 or 2028, and there's 2028. Or I could say, only show me things from inventory that have posted, or so forth, or month, whatever. The payables transaction, once again, I have this same kind of AP scenario that's in here. Everything is falling in current because everything's way out in the future. And I have vendor status, so I can look and see who is active and who's not. I could switch this out and make changes if I want to. I could look, I know we have a lot of Illinois stuff, so let me find US with Illinois, which I think is this one. So I'll click on that and I can see the balance. Notice how everything is interactive. So these change, what I'm seeing on vendors change, and so does the vendor balance. Everything is completely interactive. And I even have the bank balances appearing here. So you can see the total cash in the bank. You can see the bank balance by each of your bank accounts. And I can see, I think this is pretty cool. I can see the bank balance. I see the days since the reconciliation was last run. Now, even if I ran it yesterday, if the bank date I used was 120 days ago, I would see 120 days here and the uncleared amount. And I like this because this helps distinguish the confidence level that one should have in the balances that exist here. So that's something I can make available for you guys so that you guys could have access to it, and you could literally be up and running in a matter of seconds. So that's pretty cool. And then let me find my other one I wanted to show you. And well, I could show you up here, but that was not the one I wanted to show you on. But that is the one we'll use. Okay. So let's see. There's a lot of different ways you can explore data. So one of the things that I'm working on is financial data, particularly financial reports. I mentioned at the beginning of this that I've been doing this almost 28 years. And oddly enough, the financial statements I build for people have looked the same for 28 years. And my thought is a lot of people need to look at things differently, right? Typical financial statements are great for CFOs. They're great for the CPAs. They're great for governmental agencies. They're great for financial institutions. But for the average person who's looking at statements, manager level I'm talking about, and even C level, they're not always the best. So for example, here is one of my ideas on financial numbers, right? So in this one are cash balances. So this is like a cash flow type thing. I could see the cash changing every single day, and the days where the changes are higher are green, and the days where changes are lower are red. And this is just a visual that's used to help me analyze my cash. And I find this to be unbelievably beneficial. Let's go back into the cloud and let's go to apps, and I'm going to look up another app. Actually, and I'll show you a little more about what I'm talking about. Okay. And this is also run against data that's very much like what you're used to seeing. And that was not the one I meant to get into. I meant to get into this one. Okay. And in this particular scenario, let me click on this while it connects. Okay, so here's another way I like looking at numbers a little bit differently. And in this one, for some of you know, for many, many years, over 25 years, I had a business with my husband. And for over 25 years, I kept hearing, where does the money go? Where does the money go? So I built this report initially for him. And what's different about this cash analysis, as opposed to that traditional cash flow statement, there are two things. One, it doesn't look at the date in the general ledger. It looks at the date that it was entered in the system. And that way, it doesn't matter when it went in the system. He could tell what happened to the cash balance, regardless of where it gets posted in the general ledger, as far as what date it goes. The other thing it does is, besides showing the cash balance, is it shows me the top 10 people that we paid and the top 10 people we received money from over whatever day set of days we have. And it doesn't have to be 10. It could be any number that you want it. You could even take off the number if you want. But I can see, literally see exactly what my cash is doing for me. And this kind of information is so much more valuable than looking at that traditional cash flow statement. And you could do this with all kinds of operational statement as well. So we have an AR balance that we've done some stuff with, the AP balance, we've already looked at that a little bit, and even financial numbers. Now, I don't have anything going on in my cash here, but I could look at how my payables has changed over a quarter and compare that to how cash has changed or profit has changed, and I could do the same for receivables and sales. So I can monitor, like, are they in sync with each other, especially receivables and sales? Are they basically doing the same thing? Or are my sales being artificially inflated, and my receivables just growing at exponential rates, meaning I'm not getting cash in the bank? So there's a lot of really powerful things you can see just by asking the question. Now let's go into our next set of poll questions, if you guys don't mind. And let me get to my poll. So the next question is, do you think this is cool and would it be helpful in your company? And because I'm interested in, so I'd love to hear ideas that you guys have too. So, all right, good. Some people are saying it already is. Yeah. Yeah. And one of the things I'm going to be asking you guys for a little bit of input in just a few minutes, because I think you'll be real excited about that. Now let me go into my last poll question here. And the last one is, would you like me to send you the location? Oh, that free template file I created. I don't want to just automatically send it to everybody. So I'll have to put it in OneDrive. I cannot upload a file there. So if you want that, literally all you have to do is make sure you have the rights in SQL and you have your first report for you all up at one time. So, okay, cool. Now, while that's going on, while we got that, a couple other things I want to do before I wrap it up. Let me close that poll. We'll just be a little cheap and do the slide deck from here. I'm going to cheat a little bit. No, I'll do it right. Why not? All right. So in this handout, you can download the slide deck if you want to. That's perfectly fine. There are 4 more scheduled upcoming webinars, but at the end of the year, I'm going to be doing a webinar series on Power BI that the subtitle is Not Your Daddy's P&L. So if you want to get invited to that or make sure you have the information, just type invite me in the chat and I'll make sure and get that out. And so by all means, there's some really good ones coming up. These dates for the Not Your Daddy's P&L will probably be October, November, December. So I'm going to plan on doing that. If there is a topic you want to see a webinar on, and we don't have to necessarily wait till the end of the year, like I want to see you do a Power BI report that is focused on inventory. That's maybe not, and I'm just making that one up. That's not an introductory one where I just go in and do that, or do a webinar on building out this AP trial balance a little bit more, or how did you build this template? Just put it in. Worst case, I'm going to say, oh, I can't do a webinar on that. Best case, you're going to get a free webinar that tells you how to do that. So anything that you could think of that you want to ask, Power BI related, GP related, or any kind of technology related, by all means, just put it in the chat window and on the GoToWebinar pane. And then when it's over, I'll see that and I'll respond to that. So if any of you have questions, you can enter them in the question Q&A, and I will be able to answer those. While I'm seeing if there's any questions that pop up, a couple things I want to point out about Power BI that are pretty darn cool is, again, you could use it locally for free without even having to worry about anything. So that's pretty cool. You could connect your GP data to any other data set that you want, as long as it stays consistent. So for example, if you have Salesforce and GP, and you want to be able to connect those together, and you know your account number in Salesforce is your customer number in GP, then we can make that connection for you within Power BI, and you could build reports that are interactive off of each other's data sets. Or if you have Razor's Edge and you want to connect it to GP, or if you have an Excel file that you want to connect to your GP, or if you have an Excel file you want to connect with Salesforce, any of those things can be connected together and linked together, and the relationship can be created together within Power BI, and you can do reporting off of that. One of the newer features inside of Power BI is the ability to print. This is like one of the number one things that people have requested. And let's go ahead while I'm sitting here and I'll show you that. What they've done, which is kind of nifty, is if you click on File, you can now click on this latest version. So if you cannot see this on yours, then you just need to download the latest version. You can click on Export to PDF. And when you export to a PDF, then you have the control capabilities of printing that information. So that's pretty cool being able to do that. You could do some really neat dashboards. I mentioned that I'm here in Charlotte. And so the presentation that I did this morning was all about new features, and some of the ones that I did were like creating wallpaper on the background, putting some nice wallpaper on. And this is actually using live data set from Charlotte. Many cities have open data sets, and I went to traffic stops. And not only did I go to traffic stops, but I actually put a picture of the, let me collapse that up so I can see, so you can see the whole thing here. I miss my three monitors when I'm not on them. I actually put a picture of this Charlotte skyline in the background so I can monitor what's going on. And I love this feature because, here's where I was playing. Apparently in 2017, they stopped a 110-year-old person for speeding, which I think is hysterical. That was where I had left it off before. But you could create all kinds of amazing interaction with real data for a variety of reasons. So in New York City, there was, for those of you in New York, that New York has a great open database, but one of them is the 311 calls. So if you have like retail, you could literally connect to 311 calls where people are complaining, making complaints to the city in your neighborhood, and compare it to your store. Or if you own a restaurant and a bar, you could look at motor vehicle accidents where alcohol was involved in your neighborhood and see what you could do about that. So it's really wide open. It's a matter of you guys being able to ask the questions and then starting to explore with your data. So if you guys think of anything that you want to ask, let me pull up my slide deck one more time. My email address is listed right there on the screen. It's ballen@Ingevity. If there's something specific you want to see a webinar on Power BI, reach out to me. We might include it with another webinar. We might have something specific, because my job is to help inform you and make your life easier. And if I can make your business life easier, your company is going to prosper. So I encourage everybody to be selfish and think about what can make your job easier. And maybe that's just get someone off your back because they're asking for information. So whatever the case, think about questions you have, even if it's ideas on where to start looking at your data. Then I can create something for that. So beyond that, I hope everyone has a wonderful holiday weekend, and I encourage everyone to be safe. And beyond that, I guess I'll see you guys at the next webinar. Thanks. Bye.